I have done so many things. I started out, I have a master's in English because I wanted to be a writer. I was told I was going to be a writer, and I believed it because my father was, and I was supposed to carry his torch. And so I believed that I wanted to be a writer, and so I majored in English, and I got a master's in English. I had a graduate assistantship for the master's, and then I didn't finish the master's because I was getting divorced. That early marriage didn't last very long. So I stayed on as a kind of teaching assistant, teaching at Temple University, and I taught freshman composition. I taught a sophomore course for 2 semesters. I stayed on as a teacher at Temple University until 65, I think. At the same time, I've been writing articles for several newspapers, feature articles, a weekly or monthly, I forget, called the Jenkintown Times Chronicle, and also for the Philadelphia Inquirer magazine, and also working for my mother's advertising agency, doing advertising copywriting. So I have those skills of writing, teaching, journalism, and advertising copywriting. And I finally finished my master's degree, finished the essay, which was on a very esoteric part of Chaucer's work. I mean, no good to the world in general or practical life. And there I am working for an advertising agency. But it was then time to get a real job, and I got a job at an insurance company called Reliance Insurance Company in what was called the communications department, and that was training, public relations, and advertising. So that's how I learned about training. I had learned about public relations in my mother's agency. And my boss, whose name was Sam Blandina, was one of the early experts in programmed instruction, which is now what has developed into computerized interactive training. And from him I learned how to do basic training writing. He left the company after I'd been there about 9 months, and we started corresponding, and he would come back to he moved to Indianapolis to take this new job, and he and I would correspond, and he'd come back every once in a while to produce a film and things like that. And so we started dating, and our phone bill got to be, at that time, the humongous number of $300 a month, which probably wouldn't bat anybody's eyes today, but then it was a lot. So we decided to get married, which we did, and I moved to Indianapolis. So I started my own advertising company, and I was also writing short stories, and then we got the stepchildren. And in 72 or 4, my husband quit his job to start a new business called Training Information Learning Systems, and I closed my company to work with him. We wrote training programs for major companies like Eli Lilly, FMC, insurance companies, things like that. And these training programs were program instructions. They were also straight narrative and media-based, like film and question and answer, and also workshops, in-person live workshops. And that went on very successfully for a while, and then he died. He was sick for a fairly short time and died. And I carried on for a little while, but then decided I needed to make some major changes in my life. So I found something called University Associates, which provides training through week-long or weekend workshops at different sites around the country, like Boston or San Diego, where you go and kind of live the subject pretty intensely with classes from 9 to 12, and then 1 to 4, and then from 6 to 9, and worked toward a degree in what was called at the time Human Resource Development, which included training in organizational development. And I didn't finish the final essay for that, but I now have skills in many different kinds of training, and in what was then called organizational development. Now I think it's called organizational change. At the same time, I had started personal therapy and was in a women's group and continued in that women's group for a number of years, and then decided to take training as a Gestalt therapist, which I did, and with a friend that I met in the Gestalt women's group, started a women's Gestalt group, women's growth group, which went on for the next 20 years. So for 20 years, she and I co-facilitated, co-led is what we called it, this growth group, and I also developed a private practice in psychotherapy. I'm not licensed, but I seem to have, and still have, a calling to work with people who have suffered extreme abuse as children, particularly sexual abuse. And it's like there's a sign outside my house that says, if you have this kind of problem, come here. So I've been doing therapy and different kinds of writing, and continuing to learn a lot of things, and doing a lot of things. Got interested in community work in the mid-'80s. Actually, the idea came from a friend. Joe Wood and I were talking one day. Joe loves to hear people's stories. He just loves to listen to people's stories. And he said something about, we have so many older people. I love older people, he said. And I just love to hear what they have to say. And I think the idea grew from what he said. And my thinking was, well, we have lots of older people in this neighborhood who have stories, and wouldn't it be great if we could make a book of this? Because I was born in 1900, I still think of, because I was born a long time ago, I still think of books as the main way to preserve information. So I wrote a grant proposal for Neighborhood Treasure, and when the Quality of Life Plan started, I submitted it to LISC, and instead of just for Mapleton Fall Creek, it became for all 6 neighborhoods, and the grant was awarded by LISC. Over time, the parameters and so on of the grant have changed, but that's how it started. When I was young, I didn't want to hear what old people had to say, because I knew it all, and what happened to them was irrelevant. And now that I'm older, I know that getting older can give you insight, smarts, and wisdom. And not everybody who's old is smart or wise, but many of us have learned something over the course of living. And it seemed such a waste that is not transferred from generation to generation. We could all do so much better if we could build on knowledge rather than having to build our own knowledge base. Also, there's a certain richness that a community gets when the wisdom of elders becomes part of the fabric of its life. It is disrespectful to human life to cast away people just because they're older and ignore them. And society loses out in a number of ways by shelving older people because they're doing something that is amoral, and amoral deeds impact the collective good in a subtle, non-tangible way, but it does create a bad vibration. And also, it's bad for elders. It's bad for older people to be ignored. Even if you can't go out and earn money or do the things you could when you were 50 or 60, you are still a valuable human being. And when we don't pay attention to people, their self-esteem tends to plummet, and that also impacts not just the elder who is being ignored, but also the common good. So that's kind of my rationale. What you do with your friends, with your family, in your community, really, truly makes a difference on the other side of the globe and all around it. You'll see the difference in your family, with your friends, and maybe in your community. What you won't see, but you should know, is that it does make a difference around the world. So I think everybody needs to realize and keep in mind that we are all interconnected. What happens to one person affects everybody. It's like Ray Bradbury's story about stepping on a butterfly, how it affects forever, everywhere. Now we say if you sneeze in Uganda, you catch a cold in Wisconsin. So we've got to understand that. We have to keep that in mind. And therefore, be careful about what we do. Think about what we do. Think about what we want to do, why we want to do it, and what the consequences of our actions might be. So I think that's the most important thing I would want anybody to take from this interview. We're not isolated, even though we might feel it. We are a part of a greater whole, and we forget that at our peril.